Did you notice how we sat down? I sat down without flashing a fallopian tube. That was quite, I thought.
Just one fallopian tube. You're hilarious. We are in for some fun, I can tell you that. So, good evening. Well, not evening, it's afternoon. Golly, get my head together. I'm Angie Hilton and I'll be hosting today. And I'm so excited to have Kathy Lette sitting here. I feel like we just became best friends in the green room. Oh, she's just a breath of fresh air. Everything's just open and honest. So I just shared my whole life story in about 15 minutes.
Women do that, don't we? We strip off our emotional undies in about 3.6 seconds. It's a psychological striptease that reveals all.
This is so true. But I'll start by thanking you on behalf of Geelong Regional Library for coming along today. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the Wadawurrung and Eastern Maar original owners of the lands on which our library services operate. We pay respect to Wadawurrung and Eastern Maar elders past, present and emerging. We acknowledge and celebrate First Nations peoples of this land as the custodians of learning, literacy, knowledge and story. Now, I'm super excited to be hosting this today because Kathy is a celebrated and outspoken, who wrote this? You're not outspoken. Comic writer who has an inimitable take on serious current issues. She is the author of 15 best-selling novels, including Puberty Blues, which was made into a major film and TV miniseries, Mad Cows, which was also made into a film starring Joanna Lumley, and How to Kill Your Husband and Other Handy Household Hints. Oh my God, I love this. Which was staged by the Victorian Opera. She pioneered smart, funny, feminist fiction and has been published in 17 languages. Kathy's latest novel, Till Death or a Little Light Maiming Do Us Part, what a title, is a revenge caper that propels a double-crossed threesome through continents on the trail of truth and retribution. And we are all super excited to have her here in our hometown of Geelong. Welcome, Kathy. You look beautiful, by the way. She's so exciting to look at, isn't she?
Melbourne women dress beautifully. I mean, in
what about
Sydney,
Geelong?
it's just a pair of tracky dacks. Well, aren't you sort of...
No, we're not Melbourne. We're very separate.
Oh, Victorians, I should say, Victorians.
Yeah. Okay, let's
I
just
actually
be
have been to Geelong and I have actually swum with bottled-nosed dolphins in your... That's Port Phillip, isn't it? Yeah, I have.
It's Corio Bay.
Oh, okay.
She's off to a good start.
I love the fact they call them bottlenose dolphins when it's right near where all the vineyards are, isn't it?
So perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
Now, where do we start with you? There's so many areas I want to cover. Where would you like to start? First of all, I mean, Puberty Blues is where it all began. You were only 17 when you wrote that?
Is there a surfy culture down? Yeah, there is, right? Okay. Any surfy girls here? Anyone grew up in that culture? Right. Well, the guys we grew up with disproved the theory of evolution. They were evolving into apes. And you know, I mean, as an example of how sexist they were, they used to get us to cut their names out in paper, sticky tape them to our stomachs, and then sunbake so we get a tan tattoo in the shape of their name. So if ever I get cancer, I'll have a melanoma called Bruce. And I'll have to have a brucectomy to get rid of it. And they were also the sort of guys who thought sex drive meant doing it in the car. Did you lose your virginity in the car?
Spotlight on this lovely lady.
How many women here? I know it's an Australian women. I did. But I worked out why. It's because of that sign on the rear vision mirror that says, objects in this mirror may appear larger than they are. And you think, oh, okay. But I wrote that book just as a kind of manual for the other surfy girls to show them that they were more than just a life support system to a pair of breasts. Because it was really, really sexist. So we weren't allowed to surf. We just had to mind the Chico roll, you know, and fetch, you know, go get the Chico roll, mind the towel and massage the male ego. And we had these teeny weeny bikinis. You'd lie there all day, nervously glancing down in case anything had escaped that shouldn't have. It gave Bad Hair Day a whole new meaning, is all I'm saying. So I just wrote that for my girlfriends with no idea I was going to go from non-entity to overnight notoriety. It was quite a roller coaster ride. But I'm very proud of the little book. You know, it's kind of punches way above its weight. it's still a little cult classic. And when I'm walking around London, you know, if some Aussie kids see me at Piccadilly Circus or something, they'll call out across the road and go, "Go get me a Chico roll, don't take a bite out of it, you're dropped." Or they'll say, "Rack off your fish face mole." And I'm like, what a contribution I've made to the English language.
Oh my God. Did you ever imagine it would take off like that? And what did your parents think?
Well, my mum's just told me recently that she got a lot of hate mail and anonymous phone calls. So they were like the Twitter trolling of their day, weren't they? And because she was a headmistress at the time, and people would ring up and say, "Yeah, you call yourself a teacher when you've raised that slut," you know, that kind of stuff. It was really bad. She didn't tell me at the time, which I'm really grateful for. But because don't forget the double standards towards sexuality at the time were extraordinary. You know, a man who was sexually active, I suppose it hasn't changed. A man who's sexually active, a love god, you know, Romeo, Lothario, as we say in the Shire, a spunk rat, a stud muffin. But a woman with the same sexual appetites is a slut, a tart, a tramp, a mole. It's like when the guy expects you to be so virginal, and he's like, "Oh, darling, darling, am I the first man to make love to you?" To which the woman replies, "Of course. I don't know why you men keep asking the same silly question."
That's gold. So from Puberty Blues, where did you have a plan, or did it just keep unfolding?
Well, I thought, what a great job being a writer. You get to wear your jammies all day, drink heavily on the job, have affairs and call it research. So, yeah. So really I just write because it's cheaper than therapy, and I've cannibalised my entire life up to this point. But in all my novels, I think I've written about 20 books now, actually, counting the non-fiction. And in all of them, I always champion women because it's still a man's world. You know, 100 years since Emily Pankhurst tied herself to the railings, we still don't have equal pay. Plus we're getting concussion, hitting our head on the glass ceiling, and we're supposed to clean it while we're up there. So I think any woman who calls herself a post-feminist has you know, she's kept her wonder bra and burnt her brains, because we still have a long way to go. But we don't whinge about it, do we, girls? No. My only motto is laugh and the world laughs with you, cry and you get salt in your champers, which we definitely don't want. But I think we have got a lot to whinge about still, starting with being the butt of God's biological joke. You know, you think of all the things women go through from when you're a teenager and you first get taken hostage by your hormones once a month. Then there's pregnancy, where everything swells to sumo wrestler proportions. Then there's childbirth, where you stretch your birth canal the customary, 5 kilometres? Yeah? Then there's mastitis, then there's the menopause, and just when everything goes quiet, do you know what happens?
What's that?
You grow a beard. How can that be fair? I could make like a macrame hanging basket arrangement. Why? So, yeah, I do champion women in all my novels, and my motto in life is that women are each other's human wonder bras, uplifting, supportive, and making each other look bigger and better. I mean, who's here with their human wonder bra today? I bet a lot of women, right? And wouldn't life be flat without your female friends? So, yeah, and I big up women, especially Australian women. I've done book tours in a lot of countries in the world. Australian women are amazing. Frank, funny, feisty, loyal, wise, wily, witty. Really, really wonderful. So it's so nice to be home.
You sound like... Yes, I agree. Amazing. So inspiring. You sound like you have such a great social life and so many friends. And I've been Has anyone else been stalking Kathy online? I've been watching all her interviews, but I started, I better research this, Kathy. And then I'm like, I'm addicted. She's so funny, but her life sounds so fabulous. So you're half in London and half in Sydney, and you've got all these famous friends, and I know a few stories that I'm going to throw out some names, and can you tell us the funny story that goes with it? Okay. I'll start with Will and Harry.
Oh, right. Okay, well, are there any English people here today? Okay, when I first moved to London, I somehow ended up with a sort of literati types. Many of those people have been at Oxford for so long, they've got ivy growing up the backs of their legs. And what they graduated in is advanced condescension, you know. Especially, I mean, I'm an autodidact. It means self-taught. It's a word I taught myself. But I left school at 16, so the only examination I've ever passed is my, cervical smear test. So they were very condescending to me. And the gossip columns too, because just a quick bit of goss. When I met my ex, I'm now divorced, but when I met Jeffrey Robertson, he was going out with Nigella Lawson. I don't know whether you knew that. They were engaged.
Ooh.
He broke up with her for me, and I can't cook.
Wow.
I can't. I use my smoke alarm as a timer.
Oh, that's gold.
But the gossip columns were pretty condescending. They would look like, how could good-looking, gorgeous, handsome QC break up with beautiful, gorgeous domestic goddess and the daughter of the Chancellor of the Exchequer for loudmouth colonial nymphomaniac? And I was like, how dare they call me a loudmouth, please? I have my standards. But I just decided to ignore those particular... You've met those sort of snobby types. I just decided to ignore them and carry on as usual. And in the end, they've sort of come to accept me, the upper echelons of British society. And I realised this had happened when I was going to the Royal Polo once. Now, as a writer, you never turn down an adventure because you're kind of like Margaret Mead on L plates. You might be good material. So when Clarence House saw I was going to the Royal Polo, they rang me up and said, as you're coming to the polo, would you like to present the cups to the princes? They were obviously very low on celebrities that day, like Z low, And I was like, sure. So I was standing at the Royal Polo, and the organiser was one of those guys who sends his shirts out to be stuffed. You know those ones? And he was obviously horrified that I'd been asked to present the cups. So I said to him, well, what do I do? And he said, well, as the princes approach, you kiss them on the cheek and present the cup. So I could see Prince William walking towards me, and he looked so bored that I thought I might as well have some fun. So I said, apparently I have to kiss you. Do you want tongue? And Prince William went, oh, perhaps later. And he went back and told Harry, these are the days that Harry was fun. He told Harry, I could see Harry killing himself laughing. So as he came towards him, I said, do you want tongue? And he went, oh yeah! And he pashed me, and I jumped on his back and rode him around the paddock,
He pashed you?
We had a patch. And I got to say, I felt a bit of a frisson with old Harry. I was very annoyed when Meghan came along. In my mind, I was going to marry Harry and move into the royal family. And just think about it, girls, being on a postage stamp and getting licked all day. That's what I call job satisfaction. But anyway,
the best.
if ever they were going to put me in the tower, that was the time. But I think they were so relieved not to be treated like porcelain princes for a change. So I've learned a good lesson. Just always be yourself. Don't change for anybody. And if you're just authentic, then there'll be some people who are allergic to you, but there'll also be people with whom you chime.
Yes, I love that. Okay, there was another cute story with your son chatting to you when you had a special visitor at your house.
Oh, is that
the Hugh?
Oh. Well, for anyone who doesn't know, I have a child on the autistic spectrum, which I didn't come out about until he was 21. But if anyone here knows anyone with autism, they have no filter. They say whatever they're thinking, which means socially I sweat more than Donald Trump doing a Sudoku, because I never know what he's going to say. And there's many examples of Jules, embarrassing me. Little ones like I took him to Downing Street when he was about 12 or 13, and I introduced him to the then Prime Minister. And I said, oh, Jules, this is the Prime Minister. And Jules said, oh, yes, you're the one my mother calls Tony blah, blah, blah. And I'm going... the mouth from the south, I couldn't think of anything to say. But this story about Hugh Jackman, I've got to get it right now. Yes, it was just before Hugh Jackman was really famous. He was in London, and my house is like the unofficial Australian embassy in London. And Barry Humphries lives right behind me, actually. His house backs onto mine. Whenever he gets home, he emails me and says, Kathy, dear, I'm poised at your rear entrance, or something like that. And I was having this part, and Hugh Jackman, obviously, a thinking woman's crumpet. He's so gorgeous, isn't he? And I was flirting with him like mad, and I was flirting for Australia. And once again, in my mind, we'd eloped and we were now living on a Caribbean island or whatever. And Jules came home, I suppose he was about 15 maybe, and I jumped up and hugged him and I said, oh, look, Jules, you're growing a moustache. And he looked at me and he said, so are you, Mum. Look at all those hairs on the top lip. He's like, there's quite a few on your chin as well. And I'm like, yes, it's like a contraceptive had arrived on a plate. So, Yeah, we've had our moments.
Brilliant. Oh, what else? Now, a topic that we all need to know all about. I'm probably about to go into this little phase, menopause.
Oh, okay. Well, because I cannibalise everything in my life, I always try and write the book I wished I'd had when I was going through something. It's almost like a manual for other women saying, this is what it was like for me, this is how you can laugh about it, this is how you can cope. So now the menopause. Well, I would say for women, life is in 2 acts, and the trick is surviving the interval, which is the menopause, which is horrible. You know, you sweat so much, it's like, the Gestapo are trying to get a confession out of you. But I think on the other side of that, it's the most fabulous time of a woman's life. Don't you think that? Because what happens to you biologically is that your estrogen drops and your testosterone comes up a bit. So you get a bit more selfish, a bit more bolshy, a bit more like a bloke, actually. And you can put yourself first for the first time in your life. Of course, what happens to men is the opposite as they age. Their testosterone goes down and their estrogen comes up. So often they want to sit at home, you know, and nest. And women are like, I've nested. You know, I've buttered 4 million acres of toast. I've cooked 4,000 flocks of sheep and schools of salmon. You know, I want to go up Everest and down the Amazon. So there's a big shift happening in society now. The majority of divorce is initiated by women, and the 2 peak times is when the last child finishes school and when the husband retires, because this is something we kind of have to address. How are you boys going? I'm so sorry, guys.
I know. I just did notice there's a lot of men in the room.
You will be ovulating by the end of the afternoon. But obviously you're all gorgeous men, or you wouldn't be here having all this girl talk with us. So you're very, very
brave,
welcome.
aren't they? Let's give the boys a hand, yes.
But this new book I've written, I wanted to also address the ageism that women suffer. Because men my age would be called a silver fox, a man of experience, where I am now an old bag, a hag, and an old chook, you know, put out to sexual pasture. You never hear a man described as mutton dressed as ram, do you? Never. So, and when I read books about women my age too, they're usually, you know, really lonely, sitting at home knitting their own bus passes, and they wilt away from loneliness and die and then get eaten by their cats. Right? I know no women like that. My women friends are funny, feisty, swinging off a chandelier with a cocktail between their teeth. And I just don't see that reflected in literature. So in this new book, it starts with Gwen is driving to school. She's a 60-year-old teacher, and she hears on the radio that a man's been taken by a great white shark, where her husband swims every morning. So she rushes down to the beach, and yes, it is her husband who's missing, and just as the grief is kick-starting, another woman turns up on a motorbike, a jazz singer, 50-year-old jazz singer called Tish, and she's like, she thinks it's her husband. So they quickly realise that they were married to a bigamist and that all their money is missing. So it's really an odd couple comedy where these 2 women get together to track down their money, and they chase it around the world. And the other reason I wrote a book that took us on these great adventures is that during lockdown, you know, flights of fancy were the only journeys we could go on. And I have a column in the British papers called Adventure Before Dementia. It's a travel column, and I have been to a lot of amazing places in the world, Serengeti and Iceland and Egypt and all around Europe and Seychelles and things. So I thought I'd take my readers on a great adventure, on an escapade, so we could, you know, live vicariously while we've all been in lockdown. So, and the other thing, I made the book as funny as possible, because have we ever needed a laugh more? 2 years of pandemic, now we've got rootin' tootin' shootin' Putin with his finger on the nuclear trigger. I mean, they say laughter's the best medicine. It's about the only medicine we've got right now. So that's the genre I want to invent, because when I look back, I think I probably kind of invented that genre, chick lit. I hate that title. You know, men who write first-person funny fiction get compared to Chekhov, and we get Chickov, you know, with a cupcake on the cover with a pink, you know, icing. But I think I kind of invented that sort of genre with Puberty Blues, Girls Night Out, etc. And then after that, Mummy Lit with Fetal Attraction, Mad Cows. And I think we need a new genre for women my age, where the women, you know, go forth and be fabulous. And I think I'm going to call it I Don't Give a Shit Lit. What do you think? I think we're at that stage, don't you? Yeah.
Oh, gosh. So exciting. I just want... Does everyone just feel like they want Kathy to be their friend and
I am your friend.
don't ever leave us because you're so fun?
Oh, it's just girl talk. If I have any gift at all as a writer, it's putting down on the page what women might be thinking, not saying out loud necessarily, but also writing down the way women talk when there's no men around. Because we're funny. When you go on a girls' night out, don't you have to be hospitalised from hilarity? Yeah. Yeah? And yet, so many countries I've been in the world on book tour, and some male journalists will say to me, well, you say you write funny books, but women aren't that funny. And men still say that. When you see the panel shows, how often is it just all men and one token woman? You know, I often feel we're up shit creek without a panel. But I think some men are just terrified what it is we're being funny about. I think they presume we spend the entire time talking about the length of their members, which, guys, is not true. Because we also talk about the width, which after childbirth is much, much more important. So that's basically all I do, is just write down the way we talk.
You know how they say about comedians, they're funny, but then behind closed doors, they're a little bit sad. You don't strike me as that, but do you find being funny all the time difficult to maintain?
Well, I don't think I'm funny all the time, just talking normally like we all talk when we're together. But it's cathartic comedy as well. I mean, everything that happens to you in life, if you can find a funny angle on it. So in all the books, I've always tried things that were driving me crazy. Lots of things like from marriage to menopause to divorce to raising a teenage daughter. I mean, and I've written a lot about motherhood because, I mean, gosh, can women have it all at once? Yeah, no, you can have it all, but just not all at once. I think, you have to achieve different things at different stages in your life. And part of the problem, I think, first of all, is that love prepares you for marriage the way needlepoint prepares you for round-the-world solo yachting, And I think a lot of marriages, a lot of happy marriages, well, they're almost like orgasms. Many of them are faked. So I've always tried to sort of tell the truth about the ordeals and the tribulations in marriages. And I think one of the big problems is that even though women make up we make up 50% of the workforce, I'd still say we're doing, what do you think, of 99.9% of all the housework and all the childcare, which particularly came into focus during lockdown, didn't it? And I used to have these own arguments with my husband, my ex-husband, that he had to help me more around the house. Because I think working mothers juggle so much we could be in the Cirque du Soleil, don't you think? And the Dunkirk evacuation would be easier to organise than a working mother getting her kids up and out of the house in the morning. And I'd say to Jeff, you've got to help me more around the house. And he'd be like, well, I'd like to help, but I'm a man and I can't multitask. Have you heard this from the men in your lives? This, girls, is a biological cop-out because no man would have any trouble multitasking at, say, an orgy. He'd have no trouble at that particular time. So that does not wash with me. And I always think it's in men's interest to help us around the house because I do all my research in a scientific, in-depth fashion over cocktails with girlfriends. And what I realised is that a lot of my friends were not having sex with their husbands, mainly because, they were resentful, but they were also exhausted. When you come home from a hard day at work and then you cook dinner and you find the lost sports kit and you help with the homework and you defrost the chops for tomorrow and you do the washing, do the ironing, you nag about the teeth cleaning, read the bedtime stories, etc. By the time you get into bed, the one thing you're fantasising about is sleep. And then you get the hand. And you think... men make horror movies called The Blob and The Thing. Women would make The Hand. And I used to think, here's this guy who hasn't talked to me all day or helped me around the house, and he thinks I'm in the mood for love. I'm in the mood for running him through with a carving knife. But he hasn't noticed, he's just prodding away at my clitoris as though it's an elevator button. He's running late for a meeting. And you're like, take the stairs. Oh, but I have got a fantastic sex tip for anyone who wants to get out of sex with their husband. Next time you feel the prod of his member in your back, you tell him the tax department rang and want to audit his accounts because not only does he lose the urge for sex, but he won't be able to sleep, so no snoring either. Results! Yes!
Oh, you've thought of everything. Oh my goodness.
And I think the other hard thing about motherhood, I found the hardest thing, because it was hard raising an autistic son, that has been challenging, but the hardest thing was raising a teenage daughter. How many of you have raised a teenage daughter?
Hello, currently, help.
Oh my God, it's like living with the Taliban. You're not allowed to laugh, sing, dance, wear short skirts, right? When my daughter was about 13 or 14, she's fabulous now, by the way. She's 29 and she's a human rights lawyer and she's divine. But then, I remember once I was going out and I was wearing a really tiny pink leopard skin miniskirt and I thought she wouldn't approve, so I crept down to the front door and I opened the door to go out and suddenly I heard... She ran after me and she goes, "What are you wearing? Go back to your room. You're not going out dressed like that." And I remember saying to her, "Surely my legs are okay. I can still wear a short skirt." She said, "It's not the legs, Mum. The skirt doesn't go with your face." Oh. Ouch. Ouch.
Oh, brutal.
Low self-esteem is hereditary. You get it from your teenage daughters. But I've got another good tip.
Yes.
I'm full of good tips today.
Love it.
Another good tip for you, when you've got younger teenage girls and they're being vile, next time she hits you or kicks you and says, "I wish you'd just die," just take a big drag on a cigarette and a big gulp of wine and say, "I'm doing my best, darling." Top tip of the day.
Oh, teenagers are brutal. I'm still getting my head around, where did my nice girl go and why is she so mean every single time I speak to her? But everyone's experienced it. And we'll get through it, right?
Yeah. They just get
Bloody
taken
hell.
hostage by their hormones, I think. They come out of it, would you say about 19, I think? About 19? Yeah, so you'll be fine. And then they're fabulous.
Okay. While we're on the self-help for me today thing, tips on divorce. How do we get through without falling apart? Right. Yes, we had a brief chat about this out the back, but I'd like to explore it more.
Well, first of all, you know that marriage suits men much more than it suits women. Have you read all these statistics? Married men live longer than single men, have less heart disease and mental problems, whereas single women live longer than married women, have less heart disease and mental problems. And marriage statistics are quite low at the moment. They're kind of limbo low. They're kind of lower than Kim Kardashian's bikini line, which is quite low. And I think it's women who are getting PMT, pre-monogamy tension. But of course, if you meet someone and you fall in love, it's beautiful to make a public declaration of a private passion, and how wonderful to have a life partner. But you also have to be honest enough, I think, to say when it's fizzled out. And Jeff and I divorced a couple of years, 5 years ago, I think. But we're really good friends, and that's the important thing, is to remember there was a reason you fell in love with this person, and you can salvage that friendship for sure. And I don't see divorce as a failure. I just see it as a change. You know, it's just a change, and we've got 2 great kids we've raised quite happily, and so we've stayed good friends, and I've got a really nice younger man now.
Woohoo! How much younger?
Oh, well, he's only 7 years younger, but he adores me, doesn't bore me, and does all my chores for me. So you can have a fantastic second act. That's what I'm just saying to women. Be brave enough and bold enough to just seize the day, because after the few years we've been through, you know, if not now, when? So that's where I would encourage you, and you'll be fine. I'll talk to you. Give you some survival tips later.
You'll be on my hotline now. Kathy, what do I do now? So, which decades of your life, what have you enjoyed the most so far?
It's definitely the second act. I mean, I just think it's wonderful this time of my life. When the kids are a little bit older, you can kind of cut the psychological umbilical cord. You come into your true self, into your real skin, I feel. But I would advise women not to go down the cosmetic surgery path. You know, I hate the term anti-aging cream. I'm not anti-aging. I like getting older. It's not a bad thing. But I do understand why women panic about getting older. I mean, gosh, when you think about it, I mean, I was doing some research the other day. 85% of people on Australian television over 50 are men. Women my age just get kind of sidelined unless they've had a lot of cosmetic surgery, and I would really not go there. I mean, my mother told me never to pick my nose, especially from a catalogue, ha, ha, ha. But also, I've lived in LA, and I've seen how there is... Has anyone been to LA? There's no law of gravity in Los Angeles. Skin sags upwards, it's amazing. And basically all they're doing is dragging everything up. So the ankle becomes the knee becomes the navel, the clitoris becomes the chin. And that's how you spot a recipient of cosmetic surgeries. Look for a woman who's rubbing that part of anatomy a little bit too vigorously. But I do understand why women do panic, because I do think we suffer from facial prejudice. We get judged on our looks in a way that men don't. And some of my women friends are being traded in by their husbands for younger models, and I really do feel for them. But I get upset seeing how drastic they are, how obsessed they are with looking young. So I won't see them for a few weeks. Then I'll see these breasts coming down the high street. You know, they've got their own postcode. They're arriving about 5 minutes before she does. And they've got the lips. Do you know this? Where, I'm sorry, but it looks as though she has a vagina sutured to her face. And that is called collagen. That's where they take the fat out of their bottoms and inject it into their lips, so they're literally talking out of their arse. Which explains a lot about the Kardashians. And then I see them at the gym. Explain this to me, where they're waxing all their hair off their body, trying to look like prepubescent girls. I'm like, why? I mean, I don't know about you girls, but bring back bush, don't you think? Come on. Let's ask the guys. Surely you enjoy a little light bushwalking, don't you?
Oh, stop.
I think this guy likes a little bit of bush tucker.
Oh.
Look how twinkly he is. So yeah, I am against all that. And most of those cosmetic surgeons, you know, they couldn't put a dressing on a salad. And I think they studied under Dr. Zeus. You do not want to go there. So just the dimmer switch, greatest beauty aid known to womankind. I just keep the lights low.
Oh, wow. Gosh, I'm just working out what we haven't covered yet. I was curious, like with all these books that you've written, do you get writer's block, or are you just like, it just keeps coming?
Oh, I think like for all working mothers, you know, you're just so thrilled when you can have some time, you know, and get to your desk. And obviously, even though my children are older, because my son's autistic, I still do a lot of parenting, and he needs a lot of care. So yeah, so I just love getting to my desk and writing. It's an escape and it's a thrill, and it's a joy. Yeah.
And you said your daughter's a human rights lawyer, and your son has moved into acting, I believe.
Well, my daughter resisted following her natural inclination into the law like her father, because of all the terrible things I've been saying about human rights lawyers for years. Because the trouble is, being married to a human rights lawyer, you can never get the high moral ground. And when we had our first baby, and I'd say to Jeff, "Can you come in here and change this nappy?" He'd be like, "Well, I'd like to, but I have 350 people on death row in Trinidad." What could I say? Although after a year I started saying, "Oh, let them die." And after the second baby I was like, "I'm going to go there and kill them myself, you know. Human rights begins at home." And I mean, and he's wonderful what he does, but there was never any time to do anything domestic, no.
So, the future.
My son. I was just going to say something
yes.
about my son. So if anyone here have a child on the spectrum or a grandchild on the spectrum, yeah. Well, my only advice would be build up their self-esteem, because all day they're told they're wrong, they're stupid, they're out of sync. And also indulge their passions, because you never know where it will take you. I mean, we now know with diagnostic hindsight that Mozart and Einstein and Orwell and Van Gogh and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all these amazing people were on the autistic spectrum. So whatever their passion is, if it doesn't matter if it's igneous rock formations or, I don't know, Amazonian, I don't know, anything, Amazonian moth wing fluctuations, anything. So my own son wanted to be an actor, and I was like, how do you put the autistic into artistic? I couldn't quite see it, but I indulged him, and I used to go and watch him in his acting classes, and I think, you're really good. And then he won a big part in a BBC show called Holby City. Do you remember that show? Big BBC medical drama. He's been in that for 7 years, and now he's just been cast in Midsummer Murders. So I'm really, really proud of him because it's been very hard for him. But he's also done so much to take the stigma out of autism, you know, and it's time we all started thinking outside the neurotypical box and just let these kids be their best autistic selves and stop trying to change them. So, yeah, so good luck.
So the future, we've got this brand new book. It's only 5 days old, is that correct? Which you can tell us more about, but I want to know what's after that, because you lead such an exciting life.
Oh, well, I've just adapted HRT, husband replacement therapy, into a film. And this book, I'm just selling the film rights for that, so I'll be driving around town with a casting couch strapped to my roof racks. You girls can come with me. I'm thinking Chris Hemsworth. What do you think, girls?
I'm there.
And then I'm going to turn my column, Adventure Before Dementia, hopefully into a TV show as well. So, yeah, you just got to, as I said before, if not now, when? You know, a Zimmer frame is really going to cramp our style on a black ski run or on a scuba dive. So just, you know, seize the day. I mean, yeah, that's my only message is we should have seized it yesterday even. You know?
Is there anything that you're scared to do? I feel like you're pretty fearless.
Anything I was scared to do? No, I don't think so. Why? Why not just indulge in every whim?
So what was your upbringing? Like, how did your parents, was it your natural personality or was it your upbringing that made you just be so adventurous?
Well, I have 3 sensational sisters. Sisters are the best, aren't they? And a wonderful mother who was a real role model. She's a teacher, so she always had a career. My father's name, he's sadly passed on, but his name was Mervyn. He worked in optic fibre. We called him Optic Merv. And he was a famous footballer, and he wanted 4 sons. He got 4 daughters. And of course, but I think that's why we're good at verbal scrums and verbal tackles, you know. That's how it comes out in our nature. But yeah, I'm really lucky to have these great sisters. And we boogie board together. We surfed to shore holding hands like 4 menopausal gidgets, you know. And I'm so blessed and so lucky. And I've got all these fantastic girlfriends. My best girlfriends in London, I don't know whether you know, I've got a gaggle of girls, my human wonder bras. Do you know who Sandy Toksvig is? She hosts QI, the little Danish delight, hilarious. Ruby Wax, do you know who Ruby is? Yeah. And Jo Brand, do you know Jo Brand? And of course you probably know Dawn French and Jennifer Saunders. So, and I was writer in residence at the Savoy Hotel, which was better than winning the Booker Prize. You know, I had my own suite for like 5 months or something. I've got my own cocktail on the menu, Kathy Cassis. We put a lot of research into that one. And we meet there in the Savoy Bar. If ever you're in London, come to the Beaufort Bar. I'll pour champagne down your neck. And we meet there, and that's our therapy. You know, when you're with your girlfriends, that is your therapy, isn't it? We cackle like kookaburras. But we were in there not long ago, and Tom Jones walked in, because it's his favourite bar. And we were tipsy enough to think it might be quite funny if we threw our underpants at him. Now, I'm not telling you which girl got her pants off first. But as these pants arced over the bar, I suddenly realised they weren't a little lacy G-string. They were huge. It was like the spinnaker of a yacht, you know. And poor Tom Jones, he's asphyxiating, you know, and they've got the defibrillators out to bring him back round. And he turned around kind of quite cross. And then he saw it was us, and he came and sang us What's New Pussycat. So that was really good. So, yeah, nights out with your human wonder bras is the most fun in the world, isn't it? Yeah.
The best. So I feel like I've picked your brain for long enough with the questions I really want to know, but I'm sure everyone else here probably has some. Is there anyone who would love to ask Kathy something, and I'll come down, bring the microphone, or there's another microphone coming around?
I hate this, but it's awful when you get put on the spot, isn't it?
We've got a lady down here. There's a over this side. Yeah.
I did meet Shane Warne. Even though I don't really like the cricket, I've had marriages that lasted less time than a test match. But I did meet him often in London, and he was a ray of sunshine. I mean, there's someone who sees life. But the last time I saw him, though, maybe he sees life a little bit too much. Because last time I saw him, just before Christmas, I was coming out of Claridge's, where I'd gone. It sounds like I'm going for gold in the name-dropping Olympics. But I was with Stephen Fry, who's a good friend of mine, and we were coming out at about 1 o'clock in the morning after this lovely dinner we'd had, and Shane was coming in to the bar with about 10 gorgeous women. So, yeah, he did live life to the full, yeah. But he was a larrikin and a rascal and a mischief maker, but he did bring joy, didn't he? Yeah, for sure.
I've got a lady down the front here.
Stephen Fry is fabulous, by the way. Although I did teach him a word. I taught Stephen Fry a word. I'm going to have it tattooed on my forehead. The word was misogynist, not misogynist, misogynist, which is an allergy to marriage. And he didn't believe me. We were at dinner at my place, and he went up, made me go and get the Webster Dictionary, and we were going through, so that's my claim to fame.
Oh, Kathy, I'm enjoying your talk. I'm just wondering, how do you juggle 6 months in Australia and 6 months in UK? And when you're in one place, do you wish you were back in the other, or vice versa?
Well, that's a great question. Now I can spend more time back at home, which I love. I'm always going to be Australian through and through. It's my place, you know. And now the kids are older, I can do that. I bring Jules with me for 2.5 months, and I'm trying to take his trainer wheels off. So I'm getting him a little flat, and he's got some carers, so I can actually get a little bit more time for myself, which is fantastic. And I love both places. You know, in England, you have to conquer the great indoors. The theatre's fabulous, the museums are wonderful, and there's a lot of fantastic people there. So I'm lucky enough I can do that. Typically Aussie thing, a lot of Aussie artists would spend 6 months, the summer, in each place. So, and I do have a lot of fun there. I get away with a lot. Because you're Antipodean, they think, oh, poor thing, she can't help it, you know. And it gives you being Australian there gives you great social mobility, because the British tend to compartmentalise people, the class system, you know. Even the letters travel first and second class. And I always think, what do the first class letters get a little in-flight movie and a paper parasol cocktail on the way? And the upper class prefer their dogs to their kids. They keep their dogs at home and send their kids off to high-class kennels called Eton and Harrow. But being Aussie, you can get away with murder. Like, I went to the Palace not long ago, Buck House, for a bit of a soiree, and the Queen, it was a few years ago when she was much fitter, and the Queen she'd been meeting about 200 people, and by the time I raced up the stairs, her face was in this kind of rictus of boredom, and I happened to have this fabulous suit that I got made when I was doing TV reporting for the royal one of the weddings. I think Will and Kate, and it's got corgis on it with tiaras, with diamantes sewn onto their tiaras. So I wore it this day, and I ran up the stairs, and I stood in front of the Queen and said, "I hope you like my suit. I wore it just for you, although I'm slightly worried that one of your corgis might mate with my leg." And there was this asthmatic intake of breath around her with the flunkies, you know, horrified. And the Queen just threw back her head and laughed out loud and said, "Oh, Philip, do come and have a look." Ha, 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 you know. And there's this famous photo online of me making the Queen laugh, you know. And I thought only an Aussie could get away with that, really. Yeah. So I do make a lot of mischief over there and had a lot of fun. But it's always fabulous to be home. I love it here. Although it's time for a scomoectomy.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Hand up if you... Yep, down here.
Has your sense of humour changed with living in London?
Has my sense of humour changed living in London? Well, I think that even though we're so different, we share the same mental topography. You know, we grew up on the same books. We grew up on Austen and Dickens and Spike Milligan. We love Monty Python. We do in both cultures. We don't suffer from an irony deficiency. So it's a very similar sense of humour. And the Brits, of course, they're very good at wordplay. I call it the black belt in tung fu. And when you're at a dinner party, it's the Wimbledon of wit with jokes going back and forth. And I do love that. But it's like that here. Australians are so funny, so wry and so dry. And I love the Australian sense of humour. We're optimistic. You know, we don't think optimism is an eye disease, but we're sceptical. We have chronic skepticemia, don't you think? And all that irony, and it's a delicious combination. So, but I think our senses of humour are quite compatible, yeah. I didn't tell the boys that it's traditional when there's a girl gathering that we get one man up on stage, we strip him naked, cover him in whipped cream, we lick it slowly off, don't we, girls? So the time may have come.
Today? Today? Oh. On that note, thanks for coming.
That's funny.
That is funny. Anybody? Oh, yes, down here.
I just wanted to say thank you for your candor and bringing to the fore a lot of the things that a lot of us women and men, think about. It's been eye-opening and very refreshing. I sort of relate you very much to a female version of Ricky Gervais.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why. I think it's your openness and your candor, and you're not afraid to speak about the subjects that are out there. I recently watched I think it was a Netflix thing on Ricky the other night, and it was very refreshing, very naughty, but very, very refreshing. And you just sort of, I don't know, you seem to have a similar vibe about you. Lots of fun. So thank you.
That's a great compliment. Thank you, because he's a comic genius, I think.
Yeah.
You know, thank you.
Just brings out things that we often think about but haven't got
it's
the courage
interesting
to say.
Thank you. And I must say, it took me a long time to come out about the fact that my son's autistic. I didn't talk. That was the one thing I didn't talk about. When you asked me about being brave, and I didn't talk about that because I didn't want to invade his privacy. But when he was 21, and I wrote this book called The Boy Who Fell to Earth, and I said to him, how would you feel about us coming out about your condition? And he read the book and he said, well, Mum, it's a celebration of idiosyncrasies, eccentricities, and being different. And I said, that's exactly what it is. Thank you, Jules. And I very tentatively, really nervously started talking about it in public. But I'm so glad I did, because what it taught me is it's always better to shine a light into a dark corner. And I don't know why it took me so long to come out about that. It can only make things better. And that's what girls' nights out are all about, aren't they? Where we're so candid with each other, because it's therapy. It's like strapping a giant shock absorber to your brain. And it's not just me imagining that women are funny when we're together. Anthropologists say that women in all cultures on the planet laugh more often than men, especially in all female groups. So it's just a way that it's letting off steam, but it's also how we bond, and it's incredibly therapeutic. So I always think if one of my novels has made one woman feel better about her life in some way, well, that's better than winning the Pulitzer Prize for me. That's exactly what I've always wanted to do. And you can't do that without being open and honest, yeah. Do I still see myself as a shyer girl? Are you? Yeah. Oh, you're a Westie. Yeah. Okay. So the question is, do I still see myself as a shyer girl? And did I ever buy a pie from the Cronulla pie shop? Yeah, it's fabulous. Yeah, it's great. But Scott Morrison is my local member, as you know, and I still vote in that electorate because that's where my mum lives. But I'd quite like to chop him up and put him in that pie. Yeah. Yeah. When he said recently that he'd worn out the carpet by the bed praying, I thought, yeah, I don't think he was on his knees worshipping at the altar of Jen. You know? So yeah, I do still see myself as a shy girl. Yeah, and two of my sisters still live there. Yeah. Although I surf my brainwaves now. Any other little questions? I wish we were going on a girls' night out. Wouldn't that be great?
Do you find your books sell well in the United States?
Well, in the States,
Humour's different, isn't it?
It's very different, yeah. In the States, when I do book tours in America, the audience mostly looks at me like this. And I'll tell you, this is what the American book tours are like. I was telling my lovely publicist Karen at the back what it's like being on an American book tour. It's awful. I mean, it's horrific because most Americans, I don't know, I think their reading material is limited to their bank balances and their menus. And I was in Pittsburgh and I was doing a talk at the town hall. And I went out on stage, and it was for a book called Alter Ego. So it was a lot about marriage, and you know, I'd written a funny speech, and I was giving this talk, and I started talking, and there was no laughter coming, and I couldn't see because the lights were blinding, though, in my eyes, and there was no laughter. I thought, oh God, that's not going well. So the very big penis joke I had at the end, I moved forward. You know, I thought, give them my best penis joke. Nothing. Then I get slow hand clapping, booing, and I'm like, oh, this is disaster. And you know when you're on stage and you can't see, I ducked down under the lights, and there were about 500 men there, older men in pinstripe suits, and I'm like, what's going on? In the end, I kind of ran off stage before they threw tomatoes at me. And I said to the bookshop guy, what happened? You know, what's gone on? And he said, we didn't like to tell you, but we got your night mixed up with Senator John McCain. And the only funny thing was, I thought the next night he was going to get my readers. He was going to get breast-squirting mothers and, you know, transvestites and all the gay girls and all the feminists, you know, and that I would have liked to have seen, yeah. So, yeah, in America, I find it sometimes hard to resonate, not in New York and LA, but in the big bit in the middle, yeah, yes. Yeah.
Anybody else down here?
You've got great hair, by the way.
Thank you.
It's fabulous.
Thank you. Your adventure before dementia, what is your recommendation to do before dementia? What would you go and do if you could do anything, seeing that you've travelled a lot and done all those things?
Well, there's just so much to do. I mean, I loved going to Egypt. That was so mind-blowing. I don't know if any of you have been there. But just get your head around this. Cleopatra would have taken Mark Antony to the pyramids to look at old stuff. That's how ancient it is. So I loved that. And I also loved, I've just been diving with whale sharks in the Ningaloo Reef. If you've not done that, that was also awe-inspiring. Iceland's fantastic. Iceland is just mind-blowing. It's very ejaculatory. Everything's ejaculating. Volcanoes, geysers. I mean, it's all going off, but lovely, lovely people. And it's a really feminist country. You know, it's only got 500,000 people, but they didn't have, when the women were fed up with trying to get equal pay and nothing was changing, the women of Iceland went on strike. And so not one woman got up in the morning. The stay-at-home mums, or I'd rather call them domestic engineers, or the presidents of in-home pedagogy, they didn't take the kids to school, the teachers didn't go, the doctors didn't go, the nurses didn't go, all the women stayed in bed, and they got equal pay passed in 2 days. And that's what we should do here. Enough already.
Yeah, great idea.
You know, yeah, right. And sometimes, you know, men say to me, oh, you feminists are asking for so much. Are we? What do we want? Equal pay? That would be really, really nice. We'd like men to work out that Mutual Orgasm's not an insurance company. That'd be great. Great. We'd like them to help us around the house, which is in their interests because it's scientifically proven that no woman ever shot her husband while he was vacuuming. Yes? And we'd like them to do the odd sensitive thing with snow peas in the kitchen because the way to a woman's heart is through her stomach. That is not aiming too high. Boys, what does a woman really want in bed? Breakfast and a really good book. And I don't think that's a lot to ask, do you? No. So we need the men to come and join us at the barricades because it's not going to change until they get on side, you know, and it's enough already, please.
Oh, there's a brave man down the back.
Are you ovulating?
No, but I do like waking up on a Sunday morning when your column is in the weekend magazine. So that's why
thank you. That's very kind.
But speaking of a good book, I just finished reading Jimmy Carr's Before and Laughter
That's
book.
funny. I just finished that too.
I just thought his take on comedy, his irreverence, but also his analysis of comedy reminded me of your... So I just like to know what you think of Jimmy Carr.
Well, Jimmy Carr's a controversial character, as you know, because he's a tax avoider, which is I find abhorrent, and his humour can be a bit nihilistic and a little bit misanthropic and a little bit misogynistic. Having said that, I know him. He's my neighbour, and we're friendly. But I think he's a little bit, I haven't said this before, but I think he's a little bit on the autistic spectrum. And when I read his book, I listened to it when I was, going for walks and stuff. And the way he analyses his comedy and the way he dissects it is a very autistic approach. So what did you feel that when you...
I, like you, thought all those things. But I think he's extremely funny. I just didn't know how to handle, he had that terrible joke about Jews and gypsies, and a lot of his women jokes aren't too good either.
I mean, I love Hugh. I think you can be funny about every subject, but don't be cruel. I don't think I'm cruel in my books unless it's a bloke who deserves to have his testicles used as maracas, and there are a few of those. But I don't try and be cruel. So I think that's the big difference. Yeah.
I think I'll finish, but I think what was Borat had a comedy. He went to some comedy school, and the guy, an elder American chap, he might have been in the John Cain audience, I'm not sure, but he said to him, "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't make jokes and we don't laugh at people who can't help what they've got." And I thought that was a really special and wise thing to say.
I like humour because I think if you can disarm with charm, you've got you're more likely to be able to slip your feminist message in. So that's what I like to do. And my favourite thing is when a woman will say to me that she was reading my book in bed, and her husband will say, "Oh, what are you reading a book by that loudmouth feminist for?" And he'll say, "Read me out a bit." And she'll read a line, he'll go, And he'll go, "Read me another bit." And then he'll disappear into the toilet with the book, because some men think sitting on the toilet's a leisure activity. I don't know what they're doing in there. But I always think that's a great compliment, that you've won over someone who may not necessarily ever have listened to your point of view. So, yeah, I think comedy's, for me, always laughter is the best medicine, yeah.
Well, you've certainly won us all over today, wouldn't you agree? I don't know about everyone else, but I really haven't laughed as much. I can't remember last time I've laughed that much, so I'm sure that you all feel the same. So we're so grateful you came all the way to G-Town.
To G-Town, that's right. Well, it's the G-spot.
It is?
Yeah.
Why have I never thought about that?
Yeah, it's the geographical G-spot of Victoria.
Totally.
And it's rubbing me up the right way.
Oh. You're the best. So we've run out of time to continue with the questions, but you can always pin Kathy down at the book table. We've got Torquay Books over here, where we're selling the book today, and you can get yourself a signed copy. But before we finish, Kathy and I we discussed that we were going to have a selfie with the crowd before we wind up. So, Kathy, let's do our
Unless anyone's here with their toy boy and they shouldn't be here. Just checking.
There are a few toy boys out there, aren't there? Ooh. They're very brave boys that came along today. So thank you for coming, gentlemen.
How are we
So we have to do it this way, don't we? To get everyone in. Smile, everybody. I don't know if that's working, but anyway. Didn't quite get everyone in. Big round of applause for Kathy. Thank you so much. What a treasure.
Can I just say thank you for being my human wonder bras today and being so uplifting and supportive to me. And thank you. You've been a great human wonder bra too.
Oh, you're the best.
I can't wait to meet you over there and say good day and get some of your stories.
Yes. So everyone, you're welcome to head on over to the book. Thank you. On behalf of Geelong Library.